All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Juan Carlos López. I am the Director of Teaching and Learning for the Maple League of Universities, and I am coming to you from Mi'kma'ki, the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. I say these words as my commitment to listen and listen and listen. My very dear colleague, Kesa Monroe Anderson, says, once you are done listening, go back and listen and listen and listen again. And I do that. And I want to listen to learn about the truth. I want to listen and learn about the truth of what had happened and what still happens in these lands. And following the recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, work toward the decolonization and reconciliation in these lands. I would also like to recognize that these lands I'm coming to you from have received people of African descent in several ways. The recorded, the first recording of a person of African descent is actually very rich in itself because it's the Costa that came as a translator between the colonizers and the Mi'kmaq. So that in itself tells you that there had to be contact for that person to be able to be the translator. So that record in itself is very rich. And I do that in the same spirit of listening and listening and listening and listening and listening and listening again to learn about the truth of what had happened, what still happens, and with that, move towards a better future for all of us. And I say that from my perspective as an immigrant and a settler in these lands. So thank you, everyone. I had kind of a script written on this side, but first I would like to mention for some of you who registered before, we had 4 speakers today. We have one from each of our Maple League schools. And one of our speakers wasn't able to join us today. So Emily Keenlyside agreed to be here with us. So thank you, Emily. And so before we get started, I know many of you. I know many of you, and I know that many of you actually know what the Maple League is, but I would like to take a little bit of time in this session to tell you a little bit about the Maple League. So the Maple League of Universities formed initially as the U4, and that was in 2013. Jessica, correct me if my numbers are right or wrong. And became actually the Maple League under the name that we know, the Maple League of Universities, in 2013. We are a consortium of 4 universities, all located in Eastern Canada. So that would be Acadia University, Bishop's University, Mount Allison University, and San Francis of Xavier University. Some of the things that our universities have in common is that that we pursue a liberal education. We're in smaller towns. We are integrated into our communities, and so that creates a space that is very similar in the 4 campuses. And having had the opportunity to travel and being in all those campuses, I always feel like I'm in a very similar space, just with a lot of colleagues, wonderful colleagues in all of those campuses. So if I go to the formal language that we use in the webpage, we're all committed to outstanding teaching, exceptional hands-on research experiences, collaborating closely with students, and creating unique opportunities to contribute to communities at home and around the world. This space of the Maple League of Universities is actually a very good example of what we mean by having community, creating community, and particularly collaborating together. So when the Maple League was created, the guiding questions that for our work was, what can we do together that we cannot do on our own, and how does working together enhance what we already do on our individual campuses? So when doing this presentation today, I was thinking of bringing numbers, of how many book clubs we have done, how many micro certificates we have done, the presentations that people have been engaged, the hundreds, if not thousands, of different people, different institutions. We have engaged with not only in our 4 institutions or in Canada, in the States and around the world. We have people who join, for instance, from New Zealand at 6 in the morning, to be in a book club. Same colleagues from Australia and UK and so on and so forth. So that the reach has been actually quite impressive. So again, I could go into a lot of numbers and key performance indicators, but I decided against it, and I actually decided against it yesterday, because there is something very important about the Maple League, which is the human aspect, and when I say, come in, I feel you're coming in the room, I do. So for me, it has been a space of growth, actual growth. The way that I describe it when I joined the Maple League, and this was a colleague, Mary Sweetman, and in my institution connected me with the Maple League because of work I was doing with students to be in a report of teaching, impactful teaching practices. And that's how I first connected. And then I get this email to be invited to do a talk. And I said, you don't want to talk from me. What am I, what am I to give you, And then it was Neil who wrote back and said, oh, no, we know what you do. And we see you. And then Jessica in the call, I always credit her for finding me in a hall, in a professional hall, pulling me out of that hall, bringing me back to the land of the living and saying, let's work. And that's what we have done over all these years. I have worked and worked and worked in continuing not in continuing the spaces that we're creating, continuing fostering and nurturing those spaces that were already created and creating new connections and new ones. So this is how I came to the Maple League, and this is very briefly part of what it means to me. So I'm saying all this because, as some of you may have read in the invitations, this is probably our last Better Together, and that's a very hard thing to sit with for me. I worked as the director of teaching and learning for the Maple League. I came directly to work with a committee, we call them MLTLC, so the Maple League Teaching and Learning Committee. This committee have been in place for probably it's over a decade. So it's, those who started, Tony, one of them, who couldn't be here today, 11 years, he says, that he's been at this. So, it is more than a decade of work. For me, joining this group was really important. This group guided me and taught me how to be in this group. And this is the group I work very closely with to deliver the programming in the 3 years that I've been in this position. Earlier this, I think it was end of last month, I received a message to actually go and open a PDF letter that says that the position, the initial term of my position was 3 years as Director of Teaching and Learning for our virtual Maple League Teaching and Learning Center. That could be extended, but at that moment, the board of the Maple League of Universities, and this board is conformed by the VP academics of the 4 institutions, the board has decided that the position would not be renewed or continued. What is listed in the letter is that the board would be reviewing the organizational model of the consortium, and we'll do a revised approach to the work. Full stop. That's where I'm at. So we are finishing the programming to the end of this month. Jack Wright, the executive director that has been with me in these 3 years, is here in the call as well. He's finishing his tenure too as well, and that's where we are. So I couldn't tell you what the future would look like or what happens. I just know that there will be reassessing of the organizational model. That's all I can tell you at this moment. So getting that, I just wanted to start us by recognizing that and acknowledging that is the place we're in. So today, I'll park that aside, and I will tell you who the 4 people that are here, who they are. So I am going to, they are my very admired colleagues, friends, co-conspirators, collaborators, etc. And I'm going to read a little bit of their bio so that I do justice to my presentation, and then I will hand it to, well, actually, I'll ask the first question, and then I'll hand it to them to follow it. Okay, so we have Dr. Erin Austen, who's a professor in the department and chairing who's a professor and department chair in the Department of Psychology at San Francis Xavier University. She completed a PhD in perceptual psychology and a postdoc in human kinetics and computer science at the University of British Columbia, and had teaching, spent some time teaching in the Yukon College. Then she returned to her alma mater, and her research interests are varied. Much of her research is connected to health and health promotion. She's also very invested in teaching and in continually improving her teaching practice, while also working to create institutional support for faculty development. She has held teaching relevant leadership roles, including chair of the StFX Faculty Development Committee and co-chair of the Maple League Teaching and Learning Committee. So thank you, Erin. She's a 2024 recipient of the 3M National Teaching Fellowship, which recognizes the trifecta of teaching, excellence, innovation, and educational leadership. Dr. Eva Curry is an associate professor of mathematics at Acadia University. As a younger student, she attended 9 schools, plus a short stint in with homeschooling. Oh, I think I didn't know if I knew that, Eva, actually, across various communities in Maine, Wisconsin, and New Hampshire, which included a wide range of educational approaches. Her university experience as a student, as a researcher, and as an educator spanned private liberal arts colleges, public liberal arts universities, and public comprehensive universities of varying sizes in both the US and Canada. Instruction is in educational philosophies and policy, together with critical reflection on her own learning experiences, have been components of her student experience from an unusually young age. She has maintained an interest in liberatory education and continued to build her experience and knowledge through her career as a university educator, also informed by and informing her non-academic work in feminist and anti-poverty activism. Dr. Jessica Riddell is the founder of Hope Circus Institute, a think tank dedicated to systems rewiring and renewal in the post-secondary sector. She's a full professor of early modern literature in English department at Bishop's University. She holds the Stephen Jaroslawski Chair of Undergraduate Teaching Excellence. In this capacity, she focuses on systems change in higher education that fosters human flourishing. In her research, teaching, leadership, and administration, she participates in a wide range of conversations at the national and international levels about how universities fulfill the social contract to a broader society. Dr. Riddell seeks to build communities and ecosystems animated by a generosity of spirit, with a focus on mentorship, leadership, and a commitment to support established and emerging learners and scholars in the pursuit of knowledge creation and sharing. And last but not least, and again, I want to express my thank you, Emily, for joining us today. Emily Keenlyside is a settler practitioner scholar living in Yoyogi, Muniang, or what we know now as Montreal. She has over 2 decades of experience designing, facilitating, and coordinating educational workshops as a community worker, museum educator, and university lecturer. Emily holds a PhD from Concordia University, where her research examined our museum's educators' professional learning in times of political and historical reckoning. Currently, Emily administers research grants, trains and consults museum education and cultural mediation, and teaches museum studies. In 2024, she received the Mount Allison University Innovation Inclusion Outstanding Excellence in Teaching Award. So with that, we're going to get started with our discussion, and we will invite the audience. So this session is going to be, and I don't know if I mentioned this a little bit earlier, it's going to be a bit longer than our regular Better Togethers. We have 1.5 hours. So we are hoping to have some interventions from the speakers, but also hear from the audience, right? So this season and our Better Together, or actually last season, when we had in the winter season of Better Together, we explored some of the many challenges that we are facing worldwide, in our country and in the post-secondary sector in particular. Dr. Bill Owen and Dr. Jessica Riddell, for instance, both referred to the present as a time of rupture, a time of disruption. A few weeks ago, Dr. Anne Braithwaite and Samantha Kenny spoke about teaching and learning in difficult times. They asserted teaching is, at its core, an equity issue. Who we teach and how we teach matters as much as what we teach. So the role, and I had it in my parentheses, I'm reading from my notes, and monetary costs of post-secondary education at post-secondary institutions in society has certainly been challenged. In spite of the rhetoric against the value of post-secondary education, if you look at recent studies in Canadian population, and I emphasize Canadian population, from the Canadian Association of University Teachers or the Canadian Association of Student Associations, revealed that Canadians trust and value post-secondary education at a very high numbers. You can go, I can actually provide links to those surveys. We value as a population post-secondary education as a public good, as an essential for building a stronger Canada. So with this context, I'm going to start with my dear friend and colleague, Jessica Riddell, right? I want you to tell us a little bit about the narratives that we see emerging and describe the times we're in. Of course, in the context of higher education. I will start, we decided this. So, we will answer the questions, but of course, we will have time for the panelists and other people to chime in. But I will ask you, Jessica, can you please describe to us what you see behind these narratives of difficult times, times of disruptions, times of rupture in the post-secondary sector? And with that, I'm going to be in the background, and you have the virtual mic. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you, Juan Carlos. I'm going to start my timer because there's so much to say, but I am really committed to listening to this exceptional panel that you've created, and the wonderful humans that are in the room today. I hear you saying, I listen, I listen, I listen. I think that's really important. And I think that's a key way for us to collectively sense make at this moment of rupture and disruption, and to find a way forward together for collective and entangled flourishing. So I'm going to keep it tight and hope to be in conversation with you all in the second half of this panel. So my name is Jessica Riddell. I'm joining you from the Abenaki and Wabanaki Confederacy Territories, unceded land, located in the eastern townships of Quebec. I am at Bishop's University, where I learn and lead and sit in epistemic humility with all sorts of different diverse thought partners. And I'm really struck by the topic today and the folks around the room, because I feel is not just timely, but urgent. We are in a moment, as Juan Carlos says, of rupture. And it really started, I think, for me at least, that language of rupture, January the 20th, when Mark Carney stood up in front of Davos and gave a speech that was not unproblematic, but it disabused ourselves of the narratives we've been telling, which is disruption, but we'll get back to business as usual. And we've been hearing that narrative really since the early days of COVID, and it is no longer tenable. We are in the midst of a world in collapse. We are no longer imagining that we will go back to what it used to be. Disruption suggests that, right? That your regular scheduled programming is disrupted. We'll get back to it as soon as possible. That's not available to us. We are living in unprecedented times. And I don't say that lightly as a Shakespearean who studies a time period 400 years ago that was managing global pandemics, threats of invasion, tariffs, trade wars, the collapse of an economy, the emergence of a new way of being, of humanism in the world. And so I do think that we do not have the blueprints. We do not have the roadmaps, but we certainly have the tools to wayfind our way through collapse and rupture. And I do pin all of my hopes on higher education as perhaps the only sector, publicly funded, social mission driven, whose mandate is hope. And by hope, I define it as challenging the actual in the name of the possible. That's inspired by the work of Ira Shore, who wrote a book called Empowering Students. And for the educators in the room, sitting in spaces in classrooms, but also with colleagues, with research as a wonder engine of our institutions, to sit in curiosity at this moment and to ask, how do we respond, is not only important, but it is critical. How do we respond? And Mark Carney gives us a kind of geopolitical roadmap. He says that it is our first response, our default response is fortress logic. Just drop the moat, pull the bridges, build higher walls, double down on our resources, dig into competitive and differentiating narratives. And he says that a world of fortress logic is a world that leaves us all impoverished. And when he said that on January the 20th, I saw that map onto higher education in powerful and profound ways. That we are in the midst in our higher education sector of incredibly disruptive and rupturing forces. We have declining public funding. We have changes in demographics. We have government overreach in ways that we have not seen in at least the last 80 years. We are seeing a mission drift. We are seeing public trust, I think, really importantly, Juan Carlos, in Canada shifting and increasing as the world feels full of despair. The public is looking to us in higher education for answers. They're looking to us for reassurance. They're looking to us to figure out ways forward with them and for them and to fill our public purpose. We have a promise to the public that we must pay attention to and respond to in real time. John Dewey has this amazing quotation that he wrote in 1916, and he's writing it in the midst of a world war. And he says that democracy must give birth to itself anew every generation, and education is its midwife. And we must ask the very difficult and uncomfortable question of, are we being good midwives? Are we attending to the birth, which is messy and hard and difficult and violent and emergent, but also beautiful if we can hold that space for the emergence of democracy? That is how we fulfill our public purpose. I'm not sure we're doing it as well as we can, but I do have hope in each one of you as individuals and also within your spheres of control, influence, of care to shift the conversations where you are at this moment. So if we are facing a world of disruption, how are we responding in higher education? And I've identified two competing narratives: the dominant narrative that we're responding to crisis, and a secondary and possible narrative that many of our institutions are moving towards. Now, the first dominant narrative of our time that is animating our responses in higher education is a scarcity narrative. It is a story of scarcity that is full of lack and loss and crisis. We see focusing on resilience, right? Get resilient, get gritty, build back better. I'm still recovering from the build back better that Boris Johnson and Justin Trudeau tried out in 2021. Almost ruined alliteration for me, which is saying something because I'm a literature scholar. That resilience, do better in deteriorating, conditions without going upstream and changing what those deteriorating conditions are. The hypervigilance of the scarcity model means that we are always in hyper arousal or hypoarousal, that we are nervous system dysregulation. That is very hard to get us back into a sphere of regulation where our executive function is working, not just as individuals, but as communities. In the dominant narrative of scarcity, fear reigns and policy is used as policing, surveillance, compliance, and punishment. In resource allocation, we never have enough. So we never have enough X. You insert what that is. We never have enough money. We never have enough students. We never have enough staff. We never have enough faculty. And we know from the research from Brene Brown, when you say we never have enough X, it translates into I'm not enough. I'm not worthy, I'm not valuable, which breeds shame-based behavior. Brene Brown says that it bakes shame into the walls, and you see all kinds of bad behavior in systems that are creating scarcity narratives. Now, a secondary narrative is also available to us. The scarcity narrative is not inevitable, and it is not the only one available to us. There is a secondary narrative that many of our leaders and faculty and staff and students are really building capacity for, which is a narrative of curiosity. So instead of lack, loss, and crisis, there is a turning towards wonder, epistemic humility, and deep curiosity. What can we learn from this moment? What are the tools that we have hiding in plain sight, and how can we collectively sense make together? Instead of narratives of resilience, and by the way, resilience is often a code word for blood on the floor budgets, for cuts and cuts and more cuts, right? Resilience. We need to have resilience in every one of our strategic plans as a code word for cuts, cuts, cuts. But something else is different in a dominant narrative that we can shift towards of curiosity. Instead of resilience, we're interested in flourishing. How do we create the conditions for individuals and communities to flourish, to find purposeful work, to have their work valued, compensated, and tied to their telos, tied to the reason why they are here in this world, in service not just of their own survival, but in collective flourishing. In the secondary narrative of curiosity, we have policy not as policing, but policy as polis, and polis from that word of the collective, of the public purpose, of the public good, so that policy is used evenly, consistently, equitably, that it is clear that they are reviewed and renewed often, so that we ask, what is this policy serving? Does it still serve its purposes, and did it ever serve many? Those are difficult conversations, but absolutely critical at this moment to build relational trust and relational wellness. In resource allocation, in narratives of curiosity, we see a commitment to financial literacy, a commitment to financial transparency, and co-creative spaces where we can create workshops and ateliers where the budgets are opened, they're put in spaces, and then we workshop together from all across the ecosystem of our campuses to say, how do we tie value to resource allocation? Now, in dominant narratives of scarcity, and I've heard this at many boards, I've heard a provost recently say to the board, don't worry, in our restructuring, budget is first, financial security is first, and then if it's tied to academic mission, even better. That's in a dominant narrative of scarcity. In a narrative of curiosity, a university president or a provost will sit with curiosity and say, how do we figure this out together? I have many different case studies that change the way in which we respond as a community to this particular moment. And I'll go over them very quickly and then pass the baton, because I'm really interested in what Emily's going to say about public purpose. But in the first case study of an institution that I've worked with, in their operating forecast, what they are doing is they're forecasting the year ahead, and they're forecasting a couple of $1 million operating deficit. And they do that in June. By November, they communicate to the community that it's only about $1 million. And then again in December, responding to the Board of Governors, reassuring everybody it's only about $500,000 or $400,000. And then an unanticipated payment coming from the government means that by the May of the next year, the break-even budget forecast happens. So what happens is, in a community where the dominant narrative is scarcity, you put the fear of financial exigency on the table. Faculty and staff and students go into dysregulation and hypervigilance. Everybody wants the long-term sustainability of the community, so they'll cut themselves and cut in advance. And what happens is there's a kind of, obeying in advance, there is a cutting, there's a rationale. And by the time the actual budget becomes clearer, there is in fact never a deficit. Everybody breaks even, and yet even in that next forecasting, there is again precarity and scarcity. And what that does is it keeps the community hypervigilant, afraid, cutting. Understanding that austerity and scarcity is inevitable, and continuing those iterative processes. It diminishes trust. It justifies policies that are uneven and policing and punishing, and it doesn't build collective flourishing. It focuses on resilience. How can you do better in deteriorating conditions rather than going upstream and looking at what those conditions are? Another case study is available. I've worked with another college that has faced real financial exigency, a brand new president coming in, sitting with curiosity, sitting with all sorts of different partners across the ecosystem, understanding that contraction is important at the beginning, but that trust and relational wellness is key, that value is tied to resource allocation, that they go back to fundamentals, build shared vocabulary, live into questions together, excavate their fundamental principles. Why are we here? What's our public purpose? How are we ensuring we're flourishing? And that changes everything. In that second case study, there is commitment to financial literacy. There is commitment to governance literacy. There is a commitment to reviewing policies and to having open, candid, contested conversations where truth tellers are brought in, where the edges and the margins are also not just tolerated, but centered as we figure out how to move forward in collective, flourishing ways. Those two narratives, the dominant narrative of scarcity is prevailing in our higher education systems. And in many of the places that I've been in, these pockets of flourishing committed to shared values, purpose, and shared stewardship allow for narratives of curiosity. Both are possible. We get to decide how to respond. We get to decide how to metabolize rupture and crisis in real time. The default is fortress logic. The second learned response is reaching out, connecting, collaborating, sitting in our common and shared humanity. Now, I am going to stop right there because I could get very carried away, but I really want to pass the baton on to Emily and ask this question that I think everybody is asking about their own context and position, but also of our sector more broadly is, Emily, can you talk a little bit about, from your context and perspective, the role of post-secondary education in the context of society, the democratic purpose, the role it plays in a civil and just society, and whether or not we are aligned and operationalizing that mandate in our institutions and communities? Thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Thanks, Jessica. That was great. It's always great to hear you talk. Thank you for being here. And I'll start by saying how happy I am to be here, to step in today to reflect and dialogue with my colleagues on these questions. I have big shoes to fill because I have no doubt whatsoever that Tony would have shared tremendous insights with you all. So I'm actually going to start on a personal note on one of the first, I might even get choked up here. One of the first reasons these questions really resonate with me right now is that tomorrow afternoon, my only child is going to cross an auditorium stage and accept his high school diploma. And so that, with all of the uncertainty and excitement that comes with this rite of passage, apparently I'm also feeling it myself. So when he was younger, and perhaps naively, I really didn't anticipate, perhaps as many parents didn't, how artificial intelligence would shape his perspective on his personal, academic, and professional futures. And I recently overheard him. I was in the room, I wasn't eavesdropping, but I did hear him ask an older friend, older than him, but younger than me, is going to university even worth it? And so this friend, by conventional standards, is very successful in the world of finance and tech, and was an early adopter and enthusiastic promoter of AI and its potential benefits. So let me say I was waiting with bated breath to hear his response. And to my relief, I should say, it was a swift and unequivocal yes. He encouraged Henry to pursue his interest in philosophy and history, and reminded him that university was about many things other than a job. New ideas, people and perspectives, critical thinking, writing, networking, and long-term relationship building. He even reminded him that he might meet his future family in this context. And I think that he was really just focusing on all of the different possibilities that that arise during these 3 or 4 years. And he also told him that he could teach himself to use AI, but that post-secondary education really offered him an experience like no other. So moving a little bit less personally, as I thought more about the big ideas the panel is exploring today, I did realize how it resonated with my scholarship on the social role of museums. And it took me also back to past feedback on my teaching from both students and fellow educators. So my short answer to this question is that for me, post-secondary education, the role is to critically, creatively, and compassionately engage students with our past, our present, and our future worlds, and also to facilitate their personal and collective growth as thinkers and actors. My long and perhaps more winding answer is maybe just going to take some time to consider some parallels with my recent doctoral research and also highlight some classroom strategies that empower students beyond their university's walls, but also beyond their time studying there. For over 20 years, my work and scholarship were concerned with social justice in art museums. And I began with a focus on visitors participating in community-based adult learning programs. And then as I moved into my PhD studies, I shifted towards museum educators' own learning, namely how over time they learn to work differently. And so the first stage of my research was in 2017, so during Canada 150 celebration and protest. And it focused on navigating difficult knowledge with visitors instead of a group learning environment. But as I moved to my second round of data collection in the spring of 2020, a global pandemic and worldwide anti-racism movements both brought new meaning and urgency to this idea of working differently. So in the end, my dissertation examined how the complexities of specific moments in time and space, that is confronting the legacies of colonialism, a recent growth of activism from within institutions, a global pandemic, and widespread protest, shape professional learning and new ways of working. And so I would say that's maybe one of the first parallels I can see here clearly with the post-secondary institutions. So 2 years prior to that, like many people, I couldn't have guessed what 2020 would bring and the additional reckonings museums would be confronting. That said, it's maybe worth noting here that what's troubling me now is that in 2020, I couldn't imagine where the discourse would be in another 5 years from then. Human rights that came into law when I was my son's age, being threatened, and overt racism and hate speech increasingly normalized by citizens and political leaders alike. So to come back to museums, they've been reflecting on their social roles for many years, for decades now, and the conversations are evolving, but really focus on three things. The content, so here we're talking about what's collected, exhibited, and preserved, whose voices or knowledge systems or perspectives are valued and communicated. And then secondly, the strategies we're using. So how objects are acquired, perceived, handled, stored, honored, exhibited, and discussed, and by whom. How relationships are developed, nourished, and with whom. And then lastly, the structures in place, and namely leadership, who's making key decisions, and what values and knowledge systems are shaping those decision-making processes. So during one of my interviews, a participant who was thinking about the museum's responsibilities to address the legacies of colonialism asked me the following question. What are the opportunities? What are the limits? And what are the possibilities? And so if we shift our attention from collections and galleries to curriculum and classrooms, then I think this question can definitely be applied to post-secondary institutions as well. I think we're all faculty, administrators, students were all learning together. And as I did for my research on museums, I asked the question, how might thinking about the potential for transformative learning shed some light on the public role of post-secondary education in our current context? And in discussing transformative learning among educators, Patricia Cranton emphasized educator authenticity, and she proposed 5 facets: self-awareness, awareness of others, developing relationships, awareness of context, and developing critical reflections. So combined with a few other more radical pedagogies, these facets of authenticity really resonated with my teaching and still do, and my research orientation, which strive to strengthen the links between public dialogue, social engagement, and wider efforts to foster inclusivity, participation, and equity. But if the promise of transformation seems to me be a bit too ambitious right now, I'll come back to the anecdote about my son, who, by the way, Jessica, every day before school, from the time he was in kindergarten, I reminded him with a hug to be curious and kind and confident. I might have to text him that every once in a while, but at any rate. But we'll come back to this anecdote, right, about this conversation he had with an elder friend as a launching pad to consider the public role of post-secondary education as a pivotal, growth-oriented life experience. And so here I'm going to highlight a few key aspects of my teaching philosophy, as well as some feedback I've received from students and other educators, all of which I believe speak to the opportunities and the possibilities offered by post-secondary institutions. So I do strive to uphold, model, and cultivate values of social justice through course content, classroom activities, and interactions. I welcome students' input as active participants in decisions that impact both their learning in that moment, but also their lives inside and outside the classroom. I recognize myriad learning styles, dispositions, disabilities, and encourage individual and collective agency among students. And lastly, I take a twofold approach to facilitating ethical learning. So both working with the ethical issues embedded in course content, but also promoting learning in an ethical way. And so actually this comes a little bit full circle to some of what Jessica was talking about, which is lovely, because this is all grounded in the ethos that I call conscientious curiosity, which imagines parameters for critical co-learning between student and teacher and students themselves that are cognizant of the various forms of labor and power enacted in the learning environment, but that also builds accountability and enthusiasm for ongoing learning. And this is really at the core of my efforts to foster inspired and, again, creative classroom learning that's grounded in values of reciprocity, adaptability, and openness. Values that I think many students bring into my classrooms, but also that I hope more will leave with. So what I'm going to run through really briefly now is a carefully curated selection of students and colleagues' thoughts on teaching that speak to the social role we're discussing today. And basically, this is me paraphrasing what they have said they value in the classroom, and that I think can be embodied by administrators and support staff alike. And that maybe can also make a case for what post-secondary studies can bring to students' lives that will serve them later. So some of these things that I've heard are prioritizing student safety with a trauma-informed approach, demonstrating an ability to pivot and provide accommodations in the face of the unexpected, but at the same time, make accommodations universal from the start, avoiding preconceived notions about students based on their backgrounds, seeing them instead as individuals deserving of care, and then designing a curriculum and a learning environment that provides that care. Valuing the journey that each student takes to learn something new. Focusing on a multiplicity of voices with a critical awareness of our positionality as teachers and mentors. Facilitating student collaboration to build skills and fostering an interest in future collaborations. Listening to students' immediate short-term and long-term goals and supporting them accordingly. Modeling empathy, one-on-one and in a group. Drawing inspiration and, again, creativity from diverse sources and activities. Challenging students to engage with contemporary practices. creating opportunities for students to engage with professionals who can speak to their future careers and academic pursuits, encouraging students' understandings of each other's perspectives and experience, being attentive to students' individual and collective needs during difficult conversations, offering supportive and critical feedback, and always taking the time to check in. And so here, relationship and knowledge building go hand in hand to strengthen a student's capacity to move in an uncertain world. So one last thing I'll add before I wrap up as a side note is the importance of primarily teaching universities supporting through funding, laboratories, course releases, sabbaticals, innovative and impactful research that addresses the many challenges we're facing at this time. Projects that train students in research methods, connect them with communities, and offer them myriad forms to shape and contribute to the dissemination of research findings through diverse knowledge mobilization activities within academia and beyond. So maybe this is a good segue to hand things over to you, Eva. We often hear the public university is not just white-collar job training and is important for maintaining a strong democracy. So I'm hoping you could briefly describe the importance of this educational model in times of rupture. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. I also want to get back to the importance of relationships, but if I can go on in a different direction for a moment, one of the things that concerns me, one of the challenges that we're facing in the university sector currently is declining public funding. So one of the reasons why I think it's really important for us to talk about the public value of public education is because we need to have a convincing narrative of why higher education, why university is a public service that deserves funding. And there's a lot of kind of good arguments that have been put forward towards that. You can bring in the numbers, you can talk about the economic impacts of having a well-educated population. You can talk about the health impacts of having a well-educated population, those two being tied together. It's very easy, I think, when looking at those sorts of arguments to slip from thinking about the collective value or that public value to talking about the individual value. And the value to individual students is critically important, but it is not what I'm going to focus on right at the moment. So I want to talk about what's the public value of public education. Why should we fund it as a collective, right? As a province, for example, or as a country. And so for me, the answer, and so the other kind of common argument is that liberal education in particular is fundamental to having a healthy, strong democracy. But that's very, okay, that's very general. What does that mean? What does that actually look like? That's a very abstract sort of argument. So to really answer this question, I want to go back to the founding story of Acadia University, where I'm teaching at. And this is going to be a very abbreviated overview. I'm not a historian, but the story that we're told as we begin working at Acadia, or that we kind of tell our students, the overview is that at the time of Acadia's founding, Baptist communities in the Annapolis Valley were restricted from being able to attend the other universities in the province, which were Dalhousie and St. Mary's at the time, because those were, affiliated with different religious kind of strains. And so the community got together and founded Acadia University to give access, right, political and economic access to their community. And that included for individual students, but it was about the community. It was about empowerment of the community and helping the community be more involved in the political and economic life of the province at the time. And that idea of universities as providing access not just to individuals but to communities is really central, I think, to why universities are important for maintaining a strong democracy. There's a couple ways to envision how that access works, though, and I think how we think about that and how we talk about that is important. One of the things that I've seen, that I've noticed, centers around the networks that you build in terms of who is at a university, right? Who is enabled to be a student at a university. So universities traditionally have been one of their kind of important roles has been training students for leadership opportunities, economic, political, cultural leadership. And so when I was at a private liberal arts college for my first 2 years of undergrad, that was very much part of, what we were told, the role of our university education was, training for leadership. The networks that we built at university were very much a component of that. If you look at who has access to kind of top tier opportunities, this is like particularly notable in terms of like who gets certain clerkship opportunities in the Supreme Court of the United States, right? It comes from a very small selection of law schools. So historically, private universities have enabled access to political and economic power for people within the communities that they serve, but they've been a gatekeeper, right? So that access has been denied to people who are outside of those communities. Public universities broaden that access. And part of how they do that is that they broaden the networks of the connections of the people that we meet, and that we can kind of call on as like, this person is an alumni. We can send students to their business for co-op opportunities, or to give recommendations for job opportunities afterwards. So those networks are a really important component to how universities provide access to political and economic power. And so in that sense, what makes a university important for maintaining democracy? A large part of it is not about what we teach, it's about who we teach. And so one of the key reasons why it's important to properly fund public higher education is because that impacts who is able to go to university, right? So who has access to university, and thus who has access to the networks, the opportunities for leadership and for power that university enables. And that's a fundamental issue for our democracy. But that's a little bit more concrete a way of like connecting those steps. It is also important what we teach in universities to go along with that. So leadership, there's a couple different ways that you can conceive of leadership. There's the traditional way of thinking about leadership is very kind of hierarchical and top down, like the leader tells other people what to do. And that aligns very well with that kind of like older private education model or idea of leadership. Public universities are at least have the potential to be better aligned with a more democratic kind of facilitative leadership model. So a democratic leadership model, or sorry, a public university could sort of in the best instances, it gives students the knowledge and the skills and the networks and the access so that they can advocate on behalf of their home communities, so that they can be facilitative leaders in their home communities. One note of caution is that this kind of like value of universities for communities has often been presented in really classist and racist ways. Looking back kind of when I was digging into some resources for this panel discussion, I came across some kind of discussions about liberal versus servile arts. So kind of in the middle of the last century, a lot of liberal arts universities were beginning to expand into kind of taking on professional schools and professional programs in addition to like the traditional liberal arts topics. And there were debates about this where the kind of the traditional liberal arts were the ones that were kind of traditionally seen as, oh, these are kind of training people for those leadership roles. They're kind of giving opportunities for creativity and self-expression, whereas some of these new programs that were being brought in were more focused on careers. So they were in service to this career sort of idea. And there is a viewpoint that sees that as of lesser value, right? And lesser. And lots of sort of ordinary working people rightly respond quite negatively to that sort of presentation, because it often goes hand in hand with kind of value judgments about people relative to their socioeconomic status or their socioeconomic role. But some of those discussions were more focused on what we could talk about as like liberatory versus servile education. And so a liberatory education is one, so this is maybe more in the tradition of like Paulo Freire and bell hooks, or kind of like folk schools, Highlander folk school in the US, like other union-led folk schools that are really looking at how do people in marginalized communities within their community kind of co-create knowledge and kind of give themselves access to political and economic power through education. So it's very much in thinking about education in service to empowering communities. Versus servile education is really this is one of the reasons why I kind of mentioned this in my bio that I sent Juan Carlos is in the U.S. School districts are much more local, and so the variety between different schools is much greater. School funding is entirely from local property taxes, and so you get some much more significant differences in the quality and in the type of education between different schools in the US that very much follow along socioeconomic lines. So when my family lived in more working class towns, the schools that we attended were really focused on, okay, we have to prepare our students for jobs. They are not going to be in leadership positions. The kind of hidden curriculum in those schools was very much follow orders, learn how to get along and behave within the system that's handed down to you. Whereas the schools that we attended in more upper middle class districts, like I went to high school in a university town, were very much focused on promoting creativity, promoting self-expression, self-efficacy, leadership. So the kind of goal of education was seen very differently depending on the socioeconomic kind of setting of the school. With the difference being expectations about the future role of the students in society. And so one of the things that I think is really important in terms of a public liberal education is that for a healthy democracy, we want to enable everybody to be able to participate fully in our democracy and in society. We don't want to kind of maintain especially racial or socioeconomic hierarchies. That's very detrimental to a functioning democracy. And education is one of the key routes for breaking down those kind of hierarchical structures. I've got some notes here. I'm thinking like, okay, what's a good transition to my next kind of like section of my notes here. So another kind of detail from my personal background is my mother grew up in the Franco-American community in Lewiston, Maine. So this were when I guess my great-grandparents' generation emigrated from Quebec down to northern New England, and initially were very much had this traditional kind of excluded immigrant experience. But starting around my grandparents' generation, really concluding within my generation, the Franco-American community was assimilated into whiteness in the US. And that happened a lot, or one of the main mechanisms for that was access to education. For my grandparents, for my parents' generation, but the education that they had access to was largely an assimilationist kind of style of education. It's like, okay, we're going to give you this opportunity to better yourself and to better your community. That was a really common experience for academics from working class backgrounds. One of the kind of earlier volumes examining the experiences of working class academics, the title of the volume really encapsulates the idea, this fine place so far from home. So there would be opportunities for a limited number of students from working class backgrounds to go off to university, to educate and better themselves. They could help their communities through that, but they had to give up communal connection to their home communities in many ways and take on a lot of cultural attributes of kind of more dominant cultures. And that structure ultimately preserves hierarchies in class systems, even while it enables a small degree of mobility within the hierarchy. So instead, I would say that the promise, the value, the opportunity of public liberal education is to expand the culture of university, to question or to kind of change our institutional norms and structures, especially around power and conceptions of leadership within the institution, to expand the boundaries of what's considered worthwhile, relevant, or admissible scholarship, a lot like what you were talking about, Emily. And that is the kind of the content of education that we need if we're going to fulfill the kind of idea or the promise of public liberal education, of providing access not just to a few scattered individuals, but to communities who have been historically marginalized or kind of kept away from political and economic power.
Eva, time check.
Thanks. That was it, actually. That was kind of the end of my thoughts. So, and I brought in leadership a little bit within that. And so that does segue very well into the next question for Erin. Universities often value tradition, which is reflected in our governance models and the general way we operate. So there's maybe a tension between the promise of public liberal education and kind of our current practices, the way our society has been moving towards social justice principles, for example, decolonization in higher education, and the concomitant resistance toward change that we're seeing. So that maybe demands some changes in our decision making or in our university structures. So for Erin, what's the role that our institutions and their leaders play in creating the future that embraces these complexities, equity, and justice?
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Eva, for that, your piece in the introduction. So I'll share a few thoughts on this, but in sharing, I recognize and I hope that we have lots of time to hear all of the other ideas that people have on this. And so I think I'll try to keep it short and tight, and then towards the end, maybe we can engage in open discussion or share things in the chat. So, and I'm just pulling out a few little threads, and again, I think there's lots more that we could talk about on this. But first of all, I think it's really important that there's institutional support for everyone, and I will focus on faculty and staff in particular here, to engage in deep learning and to action what they're learning to create a more inclusive teaching and learning environment. So in saying this, I want to highlight a couple of things. So one, I think that teaching and learning centers on our campuses are key to helping create opportunities and space for some of that deep learning, facilitated discussions, and creating the time to engage in to generate those ideas and engage in meaningful action. Unfortunately, for some reason, I think there's also the perception that these services of teaching and learning centers are dispensable. And in the language that Jessica shared earlier of the scarcity model, I think that when money is perceived as tight, these are some of the first things that people want to cut. And so I do want to highlight, and I know I'm doing this from our campus or my own campus of StFX, but I am really proud of our institution. I want to credit our academic vice president in this case for continuing to recognize the value and necessity of the supports of a teaching learning center and continuing to invest in that, as I know other people are cutting. And I'll give a couple of examples. So yesterday, our Teaching and Learning Center, which is led by Dr. Wendy Mackey and Dr. Kendall Garten, they hosted a session that was facilitated by two of our faculty on Indigenous scholarship. And in that session, they were sharing resources for faculty. So if we're going to make a difference on our campus, here's resources that can get you started, and here's some collective motivation for doing that work. So I think sessions like that are key, and I'm going to come back to that. Then I think we need supports for the rest of campus and the communities that we live in to learn and engage and to be better and do better. So we have to continue work to break down silos and open up the dialogue across units and spaces on our campus. So yes, faculty and teaching staff might have access to this teaching and learning center. How are we sharing and spreading that knowledge and creating those opportunities for the rest of campus? Then what can this look like? And I think of those very small examples. So we had an ice cream social outdoors on our campus, and it sounds so minor, but it brought together people from all across campus. And although we were, you could see people in their little clusters and they're not really engaging with one another. I think the more that you have those events and opportunities, the more people are likely to engage and talk to one another. Then we're hearing other perspectives and generating, again, change and ideas. There are also those bigger things that we can do. So we have panel discussions like this, forums, learning lodges, that are focused on topics we know are in the minds of people on campus and in the community. And I think it's breaking down those silos. So we're not just our unit on campus, we're not just a university, we're a university and community, and again, pulling everybody together, or there won't be that change. For people to engage deeply, I think they need time. Time is so precious, and we have So I'm asking how our institutions can help create time and space for people to engage and to do this deep work. And so one thought that comes to mind is just reducing inefficiencies on our campus to allow people that time to do work. When I began in the role of department chair, one of the complaints that I heard from my faculty is how many inefficiencies that they're dealing with that then take away from the work that they want to be doing and feel like they should be doing. And so, I tried to compile those and shared it with our administration. And I know that our current dean has made a commitment to try to reduce some of those inefficiencies. Then you're building time back in where people can focus on other things and do that work. I also think it's important to have administrators who model what we say we value, and to really commit to doing that work. And I'm just thinking of um, our, so again, I'm using local examples, but a number of students came forward and shared their examples of racism that they've experienced on our campus and shared those stories with the president and other administrators. And our university president created a council for a president's council for anti-racism, that President's Action Council for Anti-Racism, and the key word was action. So let's not just make people tell us their stories and say, yeah, okay, that's too bad. It's how do we make change? And that, it's been going on for a while, and I know the work is slow, and so that would be very frustrating. But they had I'm just take a quick sip of water. They had a meeting the other day to look at what is being done and what changes are in place. And the president was at those sessions. The AVP was at those sessions. So they have to engage in the work as well and not leave it to the rest of campus. So modeling that these things are important, I think, is key. But I also think of the people on our campus who tend to carry all of our campuses or institutions who tend to carry that heavier load and bear the weight of trying to address equity and justice issues. So, if I just think even in teaching, one example that comes to mind is faculty are teaching content that deals with gender-based violence, genocide, racism, prejudice, and discrimination. And on top of the difficulty of that work and navigating those conversations with students, facilitating them. It's also those individuals who are directly experiencing racism, prejudice, and discrimination while they're teaching. And so how can our institutions, better support and protect those people in this work? And how can we better recognize them for that work? I know when I'm trying to facilitate difficult conversations or challenging conversations, I never feel like I'm doing it adequately. I feel like I need training. And I think so how are we expecting people to just do this on their own, right? So I think we have to provide supports. We have to work on that skill of facilitation. And it's also so important. Again, I haven't said much about students in particular, but we don't want to create additional harms when people are trying to facilitate those conversations and we're not supporting them to do that well. Another thing that I think about, and at a recent micro certificate teaching retreat, Tony Roberts presented on a project they're working on where they're engaged in mattering, or on the subject of mattering. So our institutions, a lot of them are focused on the concept of belonging. And I know that concept has been, that's what I'm looking for, criticized recently, because to belong, I think when you think about belonging, you think about fitting in. When you think about fitting in, you think about having to conform. And when you think about mattering, or this concept of mattering, it's this idea that I matter, I'm seen, I have important things and relevant things to contribute, and people are relying on me. So I think if we can sort of shift that thinking from belonging to mattering, how can we do that as an institution so that people can bring their true and authentic selves? And then I'm going to pull back a little bit or zoom out a little bit and thinking more broadly, I think our institutions have to be leaders in addressing big or emerging issues. And two that are on my mind a lot lately are, and I think it's primarily with young kids, but AI and social media. And at first, when I say those things, you might think, how are they connected to what we're talking about and equity and justice? But I think that they're very much connected. So in both, I think there are inherent biases, built-in biases that can be very harmful. They're reigniting these equity and justice issues that we're trying to address. And I think as institutions, we can be at the forefront of bringing these issues to the surface, addressing them in our teaching, addressing them in our research, and facilitating educated discussions. If we don't do that, I think we're in trouble. And I think we can't do it as single institutions. We have to do it across institutions. And that reminds me of how important a consortium like this is of the Maple League, where we're bringing together institutions, not in a, we're not focused on competition, we're focused on collaboration. We're focused on bringing people together to have these conversations. And so this model, I think, is particularly important. And so I do want to say, and again, I'm trying to save us some time, but I absolutely loved the virtual Maple League Teaching and Learning Center for creating these opportunities to have these discussions, to learn through these Better Together sessions, to learn through our Maple League host sessions, book clubs, podcast clubs. Sorry. So I don't know what's happening to this resource, but it serves a really important role. And so I want to thank all those individuals who played a role in creating this environment, including the people on the panel. Jessica, you were there from the beginning, Juan Carlos, Tony Roberts, all these. I'm seeing other people on the call who've been engaged for a long time. So anyway, we'll leave it there.
Thank you. I'm trying to unmute myself, and that is, you will figure that we will know how to do that and still struggle with it. I just typed when you were finishing, Erin, I typed, thank you, Erin, because personally, when I walked into the role as Director of Teaching and Learning, Erin and Tony were the co-chairs of the Maple League Teaching and Learning Committee, and they, I remember they said something like, well, we have a director, you don't need the co-chairs. And I'm like, no. I think I've demonstrated that I really need your knowledge and your support and your presence, and I think I was very right to say that, and I have a lot of I have a lot to thank and to your presence and your guidance, and so quite the contrary. Thank you. So with that, so I'm gonna say it is 2:21. That's it's 21 minutes after the hour, unless you're in New Finland, but I'm not gonna go there. It's 21 minutes past the hour. We are scheduled to 30 minutes past the hour, but we do have a little bit of time for discussion. So if anyone would like to unmute and ask anything, raise your hand or type in the chat, please. You are welcome to do so. We are all here. So William, go.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Jessica, Emily, Eva, and Erin. Erin, thank you for letting the emotions out. A time like this, we can't sit here and then smile as if everything is right, but everything is right. Juan, thank you so much for the work you have done. I did take a bit of note. So, Jessica, you did say that the public is listening and waiting for answers from higher education institutions. That is true, that is clear. But we're also working, we're being controlled, in fact, heavily by politics. In fact, they talk everything here, this program ending today, where PhD programs being canceled and this and that, it's all politics. The politicians are part of the public. We elect them, right? And so I wonder if you can say something, really just take politics, how it's rupturing and destroying, what we all want to create, including the politicians themselves, and the role that we teachers have in really training, developing, preparing politicians who would actually have care, empathy, love for the people that they put themselves up to serve. If you can say something to that. Thank you.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much, William. And it's such an important and pressing set of conversations because we are managing external pressures, even as we are navigating internal politics and policies. And I think that government relations is one of those key pieces. Last month, I spent a day with the BC legislature, both the political side and the public service side. I worked with the Deputy Minister of Public Service, which is over 3,000 people in public service, but also they have an upstairs and a downstairs. So the political side that is in finite terms, right? So they are there for a particular amount of time and can be elected in and out. And so they have a very different timeline and set of agendas than the public service, which is longer term and an infinite mindset about what does governance look like and what does public purpose mean. So we had some really wonderful conversations. They adopted Hope Circuits as a framework from higher education, importing it into government. And I can tell you that they are struggling as much as we are with deferred maintenance to our infrastructure, to lack of awareness of governance, to the difficulty with resource allocation, to treating policy as policing rather than as polis, and to do transformative change. So going upstream and giving real empathy to both government on the political and then the public service side, I think is really important. I think we as a public can demand that higher education is a portfolio that we value, that we fund, that we believe in, that we double down on. I do think government relations is very important. There are entire offices of government relations at the large U15s. They're doing a great job of advocating in Ottawa as well as in their provincial jurisdictions. I think we can do better as smaller institutions, especially around teaching. And William, I love the second part of your question because the teaching and learning piece is absolutely essential. We all need to sit down and have a reckoning with whether or not we are teaching civic imagination as a competency. Civic imagination is not just the imagination of something else is possible or individual survival or prosperity, but collective, entangled, interdependent civic imagination to make the world, our society, and our communities better and more just for everyone. And by just, I use Cornell West's definition of justice, which is love done in public. We can do it. I can do it in a humanities class. Anne can do it in her social justice class. Erin can do it in her psychology class. Andrew Nurse can do it in his politics class. Bryn can do it in her literature classes. We can all imagine, wonder, and teach civic imagination with deep curiosity, epistemic humility, to find the tools in our disciplines to harness that for that larger set of competencies. I fundamentally believe that we need to be teaching civic imagination. Our classrooms need to be incubators for courageous becoming, and we in higher education need to be incubators of the civic imagination we so desperately need and are not teaching and are not living into integrity right now. And I think there's an urgency and a timeliness to it. So William, that yes, and let's work with government, let's advocate as public, let's lift our voices, let's find our alumni and other champions across sectors, and let's also really be attentive to how we are building these spaces for courageous becoming, how we as a sector should be rehearsal spaces for creative futures, and how we need to teach civic imagination more intentionally, not just in our civics classes, not just in our politics classes, but across the board. So thank you for that question. I think it needs to be front of mind for all of us.
I see the chat being active, so if anyone would like to speak up, Jessica, if I can ask you to tell us what you typed in the chat, so that we also have it in voice.
I sure can. Thank you. My origin story lies in the Maple League. I spent 5 years as executive director, and I got to see four beautiful, imperfect, messy, gorgeous organizations unfurl in real time. I got to see them at the systems level, but also the relational level and the institutional cultural level. I could only have written Hope Circuits after looking under the hood of these four organizations in intense ways in communities of practice. I've taken Hope Circuits on the road in the last 2.5 years. I have engaged with 70 colleges and universities, 50 associations and organizations, and over 10,000 people. And I get asked often and frequently, where do you find pockets of hope? Where do you find flourishing? And I always use the Maple League as an example. Interinstitutional collaborations, building communities of practice, doubling down on relational trust, sitting in pedagogy as fundamental principle. I love, Emily, your notion of conscientious curiosity, that deep entanglement, that commitment to transformation. I use that every single time I am asked that question. And I fundamentally believe it. And I am devastated that this is the last Better Together, that there is a restructuring, that we are in limbo, that we do not know what will happen to the Maple League, because it is the most audacious, collaborative response to fortress logic that we see across our ecosystems, where we are in many of the, especially the U15s, but across the sector, building higher walls, doubling down on resources, getting competitive, and the Maple League has committed to and consistently sat in collaboration, in joy, in love, in delight, in all of the things that William listed, in the messiness and emergence of being in this world at this moment. And I have to say, I have shed some real tears. Thank you, Erin, for bringing those tears to the table, because this idea is so beautiful and it matters now more than ever. And I'm just sitting in some real unprocessed grief right now.
Thank you very much, Jessica. Andrew, go.
I'll be real quick. I think there's and I appreciate the comments that people have made, and Erin, I mean I want to cry too. And you will look around and we'll notice who's not here. And we'll notice that we've all talked about people when we're thanking people and talking about people who've made a contribution to the Maple League. And some of those people are absent. Some of those people are absent because their positions have been rethought, what have you. And the situation in which we now find ourselves is, without wanting to sound really bad, really grave. And it is a moment of remarkable crisis in the post-secondary sector. And even those words, sector, drive me insane to actually have had to say them. I am not at all certain, with all respect to everybody who's done so much more work than I have, that our future lies in continuing to encourage people in government and in other areas of administration at our universities of the vitality of the work that we do. I think, in fact, many of those people see us as the enemy. I think a new system of organization and relationship, one that is connected to the labor movement, one that is connected to people within the public sector, that recognizes the common struggles of working people, is in fact the only route forward. And if there is anybody listening to this call whose contracts are up for renewal on an institutional level, if you do not believe, and I did not believe when I saw it last year at Dalhousie, that a university will lock faculty out in an effort to force concessions and further marginalize the already most marginalized members of our community, you are in the same place I was. It is going to happen, and the best advice I can give you is begin to prepare now. If you don't prepare now, you will lose the conflict that is coming, and that's the only way in which I can conceptualize it, is as a loss. All right, I'm off my soapbox now, and Juan Carlos, on a personal level, thank you for all the work that you've done.
Thank you. We are past the hour. I'm okay to stay a bit longer, but I just want to mark that we're just slightly past the hour.
Juan Carlos, maybe you want to stop the recording and then we can have
I will
can
do
stay for a
that.
couple minutes. Yeah.
So I'm stopping the recording right now.